This week on World Traveler Cooking Belias. Now these are round little fried meat cakes from Lithuania. Made a few substitutions to recipes in order to make it reasonable to make in Indonesia. But should be pretty simple all around, and I'll go over what those were as we go through the ingredients. But these are very nice, very simple, very easy to make. Just follow the instructions and the warnings that I give on this, and you should be fine. I'm going to go through the ingredients in two parts. We have the dough. The dough is 400 grams of all-purpose wheat flour, about 200 milliliters, maybe a little more, of milk, 1 egg, about a teaspoon or a small spoonful of salt and a small spoonful of sugar, a package of yeast, and I'm going to use a few spoonfuls of oil. Usually I've seen around 5, 6, 7 spoonfuls of oil. So that's the dough. And then for the filling we have between 300 and 400 grams of ground meat. Normally you'd use pork for this. Pork is a little bit annoying to get in Indonesia. I have to go to different supermarkets which are out of the way and have less hours, so I'm using chicken today. I've seen some recipes that in fact do use chicken. So you can use chicken as a substitute for pork. That's what I'm doing today. We will mix it with an egg, a chopped onion, and some salt and pepper. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to warm up the milk so that it is room temperature. It's already pretty close. And then I'm going to add the yeast and the sugar. Once it starts to once the yeast is growing on the top, then we will make our dough. So I'm going to go ahead and get the yeast stuff started, and we'll come back once we're ready to mix our dough together. So before we do this next part, just want to show you, we have here the milk. I added about a teaspoon or so of sugar and the yeast, and you can see the yeast is really going well. So next I'm going to sift in a bit of salt along with my flour. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt to my flour, and then I'm going to sift it in. Now if you have an American bread sifter, you can use that. If you don't, just take a wire sieve and dump your flour onto it, and then you just shake it so that the flour goes through. And basically this just aerates the flour, and it changes the characteristics of mixing it with the wet ingredients. And there I spill a little bit of my flour, but not too much. We're fine. Now we'll look at mixing the wet ingredients. So at this point, I'm going to pour in the milk yeast mixture. I'm going to crack in my egg. And then I'm going to add the oil. So for this, just take a spoon. And most of the places I say 5, 6, or 7 of these spoonfuls. So it's a fair bit of oil. And then from here, I'm going to mix everything together briskly. We should get a very sticky dough. Basically, we're going to mix everything until we don't have any more dry flour. And you're going to see that this is a real sticky dough, which is fine. Some people have a tendency to add some extra flour. Don't do that. You want the dough to be soft and sticky. Then we're going to let this sit to rise. And while this happens, we will prepare our filling. So So far I've decided to start with only half the onion, so there's half the onion chopped. To this I'm going to add the minced meat and the egg. So now I've added the rest of the onion. I'm just basically going to squish it together. And here I have my filling. Okay. Next, we'll be back in maybe half an hour or so, and we'll start forming and frying these. So now that the dough's risen, it's been about 20 minutes, we're just going to lightly knead it. Again, as always, keep your hands wet. The dough will stick less. And then you may want to turn it out onto a floured surface. I don't really have a great way to do that. So I'm just going to take small balls here, and I'm going to work with them. And then I'll get ready to fry them. So now that I've kneaded this, definitely I think I do need to, I'll probably need to take a plate and put a little flour on it for storing the final pieces. So the easy way to do this is to take a bit of dough and basically to put it on one side of the flour, then squeeze it out so that one side has a lot less flour on it than the other. And then once it's maybe 1/4 to 1/2 centimeter thick, then take kind of a dessert spoon and take a rounded amount, put it on the top, spread it out so that it cooks better. And then we're just going to kind of fold it over like this. But we're going to leave a little hole in the middle. There's our finished one, ready to fry. And then we'll set these aside, and as soon as I have a bunch more done, we'll start frying them. So now we're going to fry these in hot oil. So pan's nice and hot. Add a bit of oil. And then we want to put these meat side down at first. And we're just going to fry them until they're golden brown. And then we'll flip them over. And I'll fry about 4 at a time. And another important trick is to make sure that the meat cooks properly. It's recommended that you cover them while they're cooking with the meat side up. So I'm going to leave this for a few more minutes, and then we'll put these on, and then we'll start the next batch. And so this is how I have arranged these, just like this. You can see they puffed up a lot during the frying. And I'll be back in a few minutes for the big taste. And now for the taste test. Looking at these, they look really nice. They're puffy, open. They've puffed up a lot during the cooking, which is nice. These are a really nice snack or appetizer. Could probably even eat a bunch of them for a meal. You taste the onions, the meat. I think they would be better with pork, but this chicken is really good. So, if you find this content interesting, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you. Please also, if you'd like to support my work, check out my Patreon page. It supports my work, and for those who sign up, you can get some early access to many of my videos. For example, right now I have about 5 months of weekly videos available exclusively on Patreon. Additionally, if you make this dish, or you make it a little differently than I do, feel free to leave comments about how you do it differently, or what you like and what you don't like. I think it's always great when we share those sorts of experiences. At any rate, Recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.